A lot of times people say we need to focus on these big higher order thinking skills, and that's awesome. We absolutely want to think about that stuff. But a lot of those skills emerge after we automate the sub skills. So jumping immediately into higher order skills might not be effective until we're able to put component skills on autopilot first. Hello everybody, and welcome to this week's From Theory to Practice, where I take a look at the research so you don't have to. Now, the article I've selected this week is called Relationship Between Automaticity in Handwriting and Students' Ability to Generate Written Text by Jones and Christensen. Now, to understand this article, we have to wrap our heads around the idea of processing capacity limits. Now, simply put, all this says is human beings cannot think about a ton of things at once. We have a very hard limit to the number of items we can keep in mind at any one time. So as a simple example, here are a bunch of letters. Can you quickly and easily memorize all these letters? Or are there just a few too many? This is a perfect example of a capacity limit. There's just too much information there for you to hold on to. Now, importantly, human beings can free up capacity by automating skills. Anytime you can lock down a skill or an ability, your brain can start to run that on autopilot, and that frees up this cognitive space so you can start to think about, focus on other stuff. So as a simple example, let's go back to our letters. Watch what happens when I simply change the spacing in these letters. Can you memorize them all now? So what happened? Did I change the amount of information? No, I simply changed it in a way where you could recognize it, start to automate your thinking about it, and boom, now you have more capacity to think about other stuff. As another simple example, let's just think about driving. Remember learning how to drive and how miserable that was? Your cognitive capacity was simply filled with minute movements. How do I work the pedals? How do I work the gear shift? Now what happens is as you learned to drive, you started to automate the pedals, the gear shift. Your brain could start to run these skills on autopilot, which freed you up to start thinking about other things like, where is this address? What song do I want to sing along to? So the ability to automate small skills allows us to think about and activate higher order thinking skills. Now, why does this matter for writing? We write typically because we have something to say, but in order to get out what it is we want to say, we have to worry about all these minute skills. How do I move my fingers? How do I form letters? What is punctuation? What is grammar? So a lot of early writers struggle getting out what they want to say because they're so focused on these baby skills that they simply don't have the capacity to think about the bigger issues or topics they want to discuss. So that's where this paper comes in. These researchers say, okay, is it possible that some kids struggle with written expression simply because they haven't automated the basic skills of handwriting? So these researchers ran two experiments to kind of test this linkage. The first study was a simple correlation. They took 114 year 2 students and they gave them two different exams, one which looked at handwriting speed and accuracy and one which looked at written expression. And what did they find? They found that handwriting correlated with expression at 0.73. So the slower and less accurate handwriting was, the more shallow and less coherent the written expression was. If you struggle with the basics of writing, you struggle with expression. Well, a correlation is cool, but what we really want to know is, can we tweak that? Can we fix this? If I help you with your handwriting, does that start to improve your written expression? So in study 2 of this paper, these researchers ran an intervention. So what they did is they took the 19 lowest scoring students, those 19 students with the slowest, least accurate handwriting. 10 minutes a day, 5 days a week for a total of 8 weeks, these students underwent a handwriting intervention. Just very simple stuff where first they work with a teacher on how to form each letter, and then they just start to practice that letter until it becomes more and more and more fluent. So after 8 weeks, they test these students again, and here's what they find. Before the intervention, typical year 2 students were scoring 16 out of 30 on a handwriting fluency exam, while these struggling students were only scoring a 10 out of 30. Now 2 months later, the typical students were scoring about 20 out of 30. So what happened to those students who were specifically undergoing the intervention? After 2 months, they were able to score about 20 out of 30. So cool, looks like the intervention was helping handwriting become more and more fluent. But what impact did this have on expression? So before this intervention, typical students were scoring about 11 out of 20 on a written expression exam, while these struggling students were scoring about 7 out of 20 on the same exam. But after the 2-month intervention, what happened? The typical students moved up to about 12 out of 20, while the struggling students moved up to 12 out of 20. Now remember, this intervention had nothing to do with written expression, but simply by helping students automate the basic level skills. What this did is this freed up cognitive processing capacity and allowed them to focus more deeply on the ideas they wished to get across. We improved writing expression by simply automating basic skills. So now let's bring this back. What does this mean for us as teachers? Well, I can think of three very important things. First is this: automaticity matters. A lot of times people say we need to focus on these big higher order thinking skills, and that's awesome. We absolutely want to think about that stuff. But a lot of those skills emerge after we automate the sub skills. So jumping immediately into higher order skills might not be effective until we're able to put component skills on autopilot first. Now, automating skills doesn't necessarily mean drill and kill. Now, don't get me wrong, drill and kill works. That's a wonderful strategy. But it doesn't just have to be sit and write. There are ways we can integrate sub-skills into games, into activities. We can still make the automation engaging. It's just our focus is on locking down sub-skills first. Now, the second thing I can think of then is this: frequency is more important than quantity. So in this intervention here, these students only worked on handwriting 10 minutes a day, but they did that every day for 8 weeks. Now, the way human learning memory works is the more we can repeat learning over an extended period of time, the deeper, more automatic that learning becomes. So students who practice skills multiple times over several weeks will almost always outperform students who practice that same skill for, say, 6 hours in one day. So remediation doesn't have to take a ton of time. Frequency is more important than quantity. And this brings me to my third idea. Most people target remediation at where the curriculum is at. Right now in year 2, we're focusing on expression. You're not expressing well, so we're going to focus on written expression interventions. But here we see that might not always be the right case. Sometimes when we remediate, we might want to step backwards. It might be more effective to go back and focus on the sub-skills first. And there's every chance that by fixing those sub-skills, we might start to boost the higher order skills without any explicit training or intervention. Sometimes if we can step backwards, that might actually free us up and help us move forwards faster. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you got something good from that. And if you like what you saw, if you can give us a thumbs up below and comment below, that'll make sure more people get a chance to see this video on YouTube. Otherwise, thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, y'all.